So today's video is going to be a surf vlog. What I want to do is I'm going to put up my entire session from today. I decided I wanted to surf the Mashup. I really missed it, having to try to review boards and test out stuff. It's just, I have such a backlog right now that there's no way I would surf this board unless I force myself to. So today I decided was the day. And I'm going to post my entire session so that you don't have to watch a 2.5 hour video. What I'll do is I'll speed up all the parts that I'm sitting and waiting for waves or positioning for waves, and then I'll unpause it when I spot a wave, and then you could kind of see what I'm seeing. Although it's not going to be entirely accurate because I kind of tend to surf south of the camera. So what ends up happening is it's at an angle, so you might not exactly see what I'm looking at. One of these days I should just surf it directly in front. That way I can help at least the people that might need help with positioning determine where they should be and what they're looking at. I'll let this play out. But while it's playing out, I kind of have a story for you guys. I hope it's not too boring. It's probably pretty bad. But if it puts you to sleep, you're welcome. I know some people have problems going to sleep. When I was 16 years old, I entered a surf contest and just choked. So nervous that I basically couldn't even pop up, and I fell on the pop-up because I would either time it wrong and it would be a late drop, whatever. So it was just embarrassing. And I was so mortified by the experience that I decided, yep, competing is not for me. And I don't even know why I even joined it. I think it's because my friends did. But anyways, fast forward, I'm 40 years old. I have 2 girls that are in competitive dance. And one of my daughters says, she was very nervous about this one big competition because it was thousands of people and cameras. And I believe it was televised. So I remember my wife saying, don't be nervous. And I remember kind of reiterating saying, yeah, don't be nervous. You have nothing to be nervous about, blah, blah, blah. And, kind of just doing the pep talk. But the whole time, I just felt like a giant hypocrite. Why? Because that's the exact thing that happened to me with surfing. I was so nervous, and I was so scared that my daughters, were going to do what I did, which was just completely flop, right? But thank God they didn't, and thank God they performed, perfectly. But it did highlight the fact that I was still in that mind frame where I don't know. I've never actually competed in anything that was like solo, where you're on stage by yourself or you're, highlighted. Surfing is kind of like that. Like a team sport, you're kind of buried in the team. I don't know if it's as nerve-wracking as, trying to do something all by yourself. Anyways, going back to the hypocrisy here, it was some level of guilt there, so I decided, you know what? I'm going to enter a surf contest. So I kind of looked around, and I had one in mind because I always saw the canopies, during summer as I drove by on PCH. So I thought, all right, I remember the lettering. It was CCSA. There was also a WSA and then obviously NSSA, which I wasn't sure how all those worked, but I decided I'm going to do CCSA. Seemed like the smallest one. And I did the research, all right, paid up, got my dues in, and I was ready to go. Now, I think I signed up like a month before the competition, or whatever the window was. But as the contest date approached, it was the first one, I believe, in June usually. As it approached, about a week out, I started getting a little anxious, right? A little bit of anxiety, a little bit of nervousness. 3 days out, I'm in a complete panic attack. Like, my heart is beating so fast, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. I seriously thought I was going to have a heart attack. But I had to calm myself down, decided to drink some beers. And then contest day came, and I wasn't going to flake, This is what I told my daughters. And mind you, I really wanted to flake. I really wanted to just not go. But I just kept thinking about my girls and the words that came out of my mouth. You have nothing to be nervous about. got up early, was there, looked on the roster, you know, checking out my heats and trying to figure out how things work because I had no idea. I'd never really actually even, you know, spectated one other than like, you know, the U.S. Open. So I watched, luckily I think I was heat 2. So I watched the first heat and I saw a bunch of, you know, of the Masters guys surfing. And you know, there was 6 people in the heat, and I would say like 1 or 2 were really good. A couple of them were okay, and then, you know, a couple were actually, to me, seemed like beginners, but, you know, good on them for braving it, right? So anyways, my heat came, and I'm about to have another heart attack. Like, my heart is pumping, and super nervous. But I walked up, I grabbed a jersey, and I'm pretty much shaking. That's how bad I was. I was like, holy crap, this is weird. You know, I picked up my board, put my leash on, I walked over to the water, and I stood right at the edge of the water, and I let the water kind of lap over my toes. And in that moment, as soon as the water hit my foot, everything went away. It was the most, I don't know what the psychology was. It was so fascinating to me. I was just like shocked. How did I go from probably a heart rate of, I don't know what it was, 150, 180, like I thought it was gonna pop out of my chest, to literally in one split second back down to like 65, 70 or whatever my normal heart rate is. And I think it had to do with the fact that I was now in a familiar place. It just felt super comfortable and super familiar. So I paddled out into my first heat, and that's pretty much the end of the story, but just in case you were interested, I got super lucky in that heat, and I got a barrel. So my very first wave of the contest, I get a little barrel on a pretty crappy, shore breaky day. Popped out and ended up advancing in first place. And now the cool thing is there was a semifinal heat, but if you win first, I believe you go directly to the final. I can't remember if it was first and second or just first, but anyways, I went directly to the final. So I only had to surf 2 heats, which I was kind of bummed about because I like surfing. So I make it to the finals, and I watch everybody, and I see, you know, the pretty advanced guys are going up, and I'm like, oh crap, man, I got my hands full because these guys rip. I thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna have fun. And I went out and I just basically do what I normally do, and I did a 360. For whatever reason, I got scored pretty high on it. I don't know if it was that clean, but I got scored high enough to where I got second place. So I didn't win the contest, but I got second place, and that was really cool. But the best part about it is now, you know, looking back at having told my girls, don't be nervous, I didn't feel like such a hypocrite. So that's story number 1. And I hope you're not asleep. All right, so story number 2 is interesting because I decided, okay, I'm going to do these contests, and I did quite a few of them. I think for the 4 years straight, I did pretty much there was 4 a year. So 4 years straight, 4 years, I did roughly 16 competitions. One particular competition, I show up, and it's pretty big, and it's heavy current. Normally, the buzzer goes off and you paddle out, right? So every heat kind of exchanges that way. But on this particular day, because of the current, they would let you paddle out 5 minutes early and just sit there, and you have to walk way down the beach, paddle out, and literally fight the current until the buzzer rang, and then hopefully you're in the surf zone, right? Here's the thing. I actually was nervous on this one because I think my weakest part of surfing is my paddle. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. And like I was telling you, everybody else is like super fit. First heat comes, and I didn't catch a single wave, so I get knocked out. Now, I'm pretty bummed because I had my, you know, good friend from Austin visiting, and I had my family on the beach, and I'm just like, oh, how embarrassing. Even my brother was there. And so I was like, I'm just going to surf and redeem myself. So I kind of went away from the contest zone, and I decided to paddle. A few minutes goes by, and I see a surfboard floating, I want to say a quarter mile out. It was pretty far. It was like at the end of the pier would be the distance, right? But we're surfing a little bit closer in. And I see this board, so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go paddle out. and grab this board. So I paddled, and it was a long paddle. Not only do I have to fight the current, it was pretty far out. So I finally got the board, and I see that as I'm approaching, the board is kind of tipping. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of weird. And the leash, weird part was is half of it was coiled on top of the board. And so as I paddle, I grab the leash and I start pulling, and there's something on the other end. And my heart just almost stops right there. Now the scariest part is I just see these black shadows swimming by super fast. I mean, I wasn't sure if it was a shark. I think they were dolphins. So as I'm pulling up the leash, I see a bright kind of silhouette kind of coming up. And the reason why is because he wasn't wearing a wetsuit. He was trunking it. So I pull him up and I grab him by the chest. And as I do that, I see foam coming out his mouth. Now, I was in such shock that I thought this guy was still breathing or trying to breathe. So I thought he was alive. So I grab him, and I didn't know any tricks to get him on a board. So I'm sitting there struggling to get him, and I'm about to drown because I'm pretty tired. And now I got this guy. Oh my God, it was so stressful. And then I see out of the corner of my eye, kind of way down there, about 1/8 of a mile away, my best friend paddling towards me. So thank God he did. And so he got to me. So he and I struggled with it, and we got him pretty close to the lineup. And at that point, 50 surfers came and relieved us, and thank God, because I was about to die. They pretty much made a big giant surfboard raft, put him on top, and just started pumping his chest right there, in the water, as the rest of them that weren't doing that was pushing that raft in toward shore. And mind you, we're still getting pounded by like 6 to 8 foot waves. Finally get him in, and the crazy part is they got a heartbeat. He didn't make it, but bottom line, they got a heartbeat for a little while, and only I had gone out sooner, or someone else had spotted him, he might be alive. But that was my experience from one of my competitions. Strangely, I think I was very traumatized by the whole ordeal, some form of PTSD, because for I want to say 6 months thereafter, I would constantly see shadows in the water, and not like dark shadows, but bright shadows like his body. And so, yeah, that was pretty stressful. And then, ironically, I got really sick afterwards, and I don't know if it was the stress of it all, but yeah, I basically had what it felt like a flu for 3 days. That was pretty harrowing. At any rate, those are my 2 stories. I hope I didn't bore you to death. I'll let the rest of this video play out. And if you weren't interested in the story, I guess you could have muted. But yeah, don't have too many more stories, so I don't think I'll be doing this again, but I thought I'd put this out there.